Picture this: a world without roads, without maps, without even the concept of winter gear. Now imagine leading an army of 50,000 men and 37 war elephants across the highest mountains in Europe in autumn, just to spite your greatest enemy. This isn't a fantasy, it's the legendary, almost unbelievable true story of Hannibal Barca, a man who looked at the impossible. This is the one of the most hold my beer moment in history. What's up, history lovers? Today we dive into one of the most insane military campaigns ever attempted, a journey that combined brilliant strategy with catastrophic logistics, where 37 war elephants met their worst nightmare and 30,000 soldiers learned that sandals are not Alpine gear. Our epic journey begins not in the snow-capped peaks, but in the sun-drenched city of Carthage over 2 millennia ago. A young boy, barely 9 years old, stands before a sacred altar. His father, the formidable General Hannibal Barca, makes him swear an oath: eternal, unyielding hatred for Rome. This wasn't a childish promise, it was a sacred vow, a destiny etched into the very soul of Hannibal. This oath would define his life, fueling an ambition that would shake the foundations of the ancient world. For years, Hannibal honed his military genius in Spain, building a formidable army. He knew war with Rome was inevitable, a clash of titans that would determine the fate of the Mediterranean. The question wasn't if he would invade Italy, but how. Hannibal's advisors presented the obvious strategy: sail across the Mediterranean. It was the conventional, sensible approach. But Rome anticipated this, their powerful navy poised to intercept any seaborne invasion. Hannibal, however, was no conventional general. He stared at the maps, his finger tracing a path that defied logic, through Gaul, modern-day France, over the Pyrenees, across the mighty Rhone River, and then straight into the heart of the Alps. His generals were aghast. "The Alps are impassable," they cried, "especially with elephants." But Hannibal merely smiled. "Precisely," he retorted, "they won't expect it." This audacious plan was a gamble of monumental proportions, a testament to his strategic brilliance and his willingness to embrace the utterly insane. He sought not just victory, but a psychological blow that would shatter Roman confidence. The Grand March began in late spring of 218 BC. Hannibal's army, a diverse force of Carthaginians, Numidians, and Iberian mercenaries, swept through Spain, growing in strength and confidence. They were a well-oiled machine, hardened by skirmishes and long marches. By late summer they reached the Rhone River, a formidable natural barrier. The Rhone was wide, fast-flowing, and guarded by hostile Gallic tribes. Crossing 50,000 men, their baggage, and thousands of horses was a monumental task. But the elephants? That was a challenge of an entirely different magnitude. These magnificent beasts, weighing several tons each, were not known for their aquatic prowess. Hannibal's engineers, a resourceful bunch, devised an ingenious, if terrifying, solution. They constructed massive rafts, camouflaged with earth and grass to resemble solid ground. The unsuspecting elephants were led onto these floating platforms. Then, with a sudden jolt, the rafts were detached and towed across the churning river. Panic ensued. Elephants trumpeted in terror, some plunging into the water. While elephants can swim, it's a clumsy, desperate affair, like a colossal, terrified dog paddle. Handlers struggled. Rafts capsized. But miraculously, most of the elephants made it across, albeit with a newfound distrust for their human companions. By late September, the army stood at the foothills of the Alps. The soldiers, many from the warm plains of North Africa, gazed up at the towering snow-capped peaks with a mixture of awe and dread. This was a world utterly alien to them. The air grew thin, the temperature plummeted, and a chilling sense of foreboding settled over the ranks. The elephants, accustomed to the African sun, shifted uneasily, their breath misting in the cold air. They sensed the impending doom. The initial days of climbing were arduous but manageable. The paths were rough, but the weather held. Spirits, though dampened, remained intact. But as they ascended higher, the trails narrowed to treacherous ledges, barely wide enough for a single man, with sheer drops plunging into the abyss. 50,000 men, stretched into an impossibly long, vulnerable line, crawled up the mountainside. The elephants, requiring significant width to maintain balance, became a colossal logistical nightmare. Engineers toiled relentlessly, widening paths with primitive tools, all while hostile mountain tribes, hidden amongst the crags, rained down boulders and arrows upon the struggling column. Every step was a battle against the terrain and unseen enemies. Then the snow began to fall. It was early October, and winter had arrived with a vengeance. For the African war elephants, this was a death sentence. Built for scorching heat, they had no insulating fat, no thick winter coat. They shivered uncontrollably, their massive bodies succumbing to exposure and exhaustion. Their eyes, once intelligent and alert, grew dull with suffering. They were dying, slowly and miserably, their trumpeting cries replaced by whimpers of despair. The soldiers fared little better. Dressed in light tunics and sandals, they were utterly unprepared for the brutal Alpine cold. Imagine attempting to hike Mount Everest in flip-flops and a hoodie. That was their reality. Frostbite, hypothermia, and starvation began to decimate their ranks. Each night, men huddled together for warmth, praying for dawn, knowing that some among them would not see it. The dead were often left where they fell, quickly covered by the relentless snow, a grim testament to the mountains' indifference. On the 9th day, the battered army reached the highest pass. The air was thin, the wind howled like a banshee, and the world was a blinding expanse of white. From this dizzying height, they could glimpse the promised land of Italy, but the descent proved even more perilous than the climb. Ice coated everything, turning the narrow paths into deadly slides. One misstep meant a terrifying, often fatal, tumble down the mountain. The elephants, their feet ill-suited for ice, struggled immensely. They slipped, they fell, their massive bodies crashing against the unforgiving rock. On the 11th day, a young elephant lost its footing, tumbling down a precipice, its terrified trumpeting echoing through the silent peaks before being swallowed by the vastness. The soldiers watched, helpless, as another life was claimed by the mountains. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, disaster struck. A massive landslide, perhaps triggered by their passage or simply the mountain's caprice, completely blocked the pass. Tons of rock and debris formed an impassable barrier. The army was trapped, unable to advance, unable to retreat, with food dwindling and hope fading. Hannibal, facing utter annihilation, made a decision that bordered on the miraculous. "We will burn through it," he declared. His generals, exhausted and despairing, must have thought him mad. Yet, with grim determination, the soldiers set to work. They felled every available tree, building enormous bonfires against the colossal boulders. For hours, they fed the flames until the rocks glowed an incandescent red. Then, in a stroke of ancient engineering genius, they poured vast quantities of vinegar onto the superheated stone. The rapid temperature change caused thermal shock, and with thunderous cracks, the rocks fractured and split. This ancient technique, known as fire setting, was a testament to human ingenuity. But performing it on a frozen mountainside, in a blizzard, while starving and under constant threat from hostile tribes, was an act of unparalleled audacity. It took 4 grueling days, 4 days of freezing, starving, and watching more comrades and elephants perish. But it worked. The path cleared, and the army, a shadow of its former self, pressed onward. 15 days after entering the Alps, the survivors stumbled down into the fertile plains of northern Italy. The sight of flat land, green fields, and the promise of warmth must have been a profound relief. But the cost was staggering. Of the 50,000 soldiers who began the march, only an estimated 26,000 remained. The cavalry, too, was severely depleted. And the elephants? Of the 37 magnificent beasts, only a handful, perhaps even just one, survived the ordeal. Surus, Hannibal's personal war elephant, may have been among them, a scarred and weary veteran of the impossible. The vast majority perished in the mountains, their massive bodies left to the elements, a silent monument to Hannibal's ambition. 60% casualties before fighting a single battle. Modern militaries consider 10% losses catastrophic. Hannibal lost 6 times that just by walking over a mountain. Yet despite the horrific losses, Hannibal's impossible gamble paid off. The Romans were utterly blindsided. They had dismissed the Alpine route as unthinkable, their armies positioned to defend against a coastal invasion. Hannibal, with his traumatized, depleted and half-frozen army, had appeared behind their defenses, a ghost from the mountains. The shock and confusion in Rome were immense, and this battered army, against all odds, went on to terrorize Italy for 15 years. They inflicted devastating defeats upon the Romans at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and most famously, Cannae, one of the most catastrophic military losses in Roman history. All achieved by an army that had endured more suffering crossing mountains than most armies experience in an entire war. Today we traverse the Alps in heated cars through engineered tunnels, with maps and GPS guiding our way. It's a journey of hours, not weeks. 2 millennia ago, Hannibal led an army and a herd of elephants over those same peaks in sandals, through blizzards, with nothing but sheer will and a burning hatred for Rome. His march was militarily brilliant, strategically genius, and logistically insane. It cost 30,000 lives and nearly all his elephants, but it achieved the impossible. It surprised Rome. And sometimes, in the annals of warfare, surprise is a weapon worth any price. Hannibal achieved the unthinkable, but the elephants paid the price. The soldiers paid the price, and ultimately, even his victories came at a cost too high to sustain. This is the story of history's most audacious road trip, a journey that was both a triumph and a tragedy, a testament to human endurance and the terrifying power of ambition. Because sometimes, the line between genius and madness is blurred, and the difference is simply how the story ends. And in Hannibal's case, it ended with elephants in the snow, soldiers in sandals, and a victory that cost everything. What an incredible journey! Hannibal's crossing of the Alps remains one of history's most astounding feats, a testament to a general who dared to defy the impossible. If this epic tale of ambition, suffering, and strategic brilliance captivated you, then you're in the right place. Thanks for watching History's Hot Takes. Hit that subscribe button right now to join our community of history enthusiasts. Give this video a like if you were amazed by Hannibal's audacity, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the past. We bring you new videos every week, proving that history is far more dramatic and insane than any fiction. What other historical impossible feats would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time, history lovers.